So, Alex from Alphadestiny and Basement Bodybuilding both released videos on strength standards within a few minutes of each other, and they have quite different perspectives. This is something that I get asked about a lot, and so I thought I would share my opinion.
Now, I do want to touch back again on strength standards. So you have to realize that strength standards mean nothing.
In recent times, there has been somewhat of a pushback towards strength focus for hypertrophy enthusiasts. And although the intentions are pure, I don't believe the conclusions are correct.
So, could you get stronger without getting bigger? Could you get bigger without getting stronger? Could you get bigger while getting weaker?
And clearly, I'm much bigger now, and I'm clearly much weaker now.
The point is, none of us are getting weaker, yet bigger.
Is strength training worth focusing on if you just want to get bigger? Do you have to actually get stronger? What about technique? What about rep range? What about intensity? What about the volume of training that you're doing? I guess we'll find out in this video. Now, there is a little bit of a gap in the noble natty movement. You have some guys who are pure hypertrophy, and then you have other guys who are sort of a mix of hypertrophy and strength. So Paris, Alex, Cailer from Stand Strength, they are more of a mix of strength and hypertrophy. They are interested in both attributes, and so their perspective is going to be a little bit different from guys like myself, natural hypertrophy, and basement bodybuilding, who are more hypertrophy specialists.
We're a happy family.
And so Alex argued that strength standards are on the whole pretty good, but of course they're not perfect, and there are going to be some outliers. For example, my best deadlift is around 450 pounds or 205 kilos, which is about the same as Cailer when he was like 14 years old or something. Okay, so this is him deadlifting my max as a stick figure. So our ratio of strength to size, he's an outlier in terms of strength, I'm an outlier in terms of size. So we have the same max, but we look pretty different. This ratio is going to be determined based on your genetics, based on your leverages, based on your training history, based on your volume, based on your proximity to failure. A lot of factors go into this. I tend to train with high volume and close to failure. And both of those are going to be more focused on size rather than strength. So volume does help your strength, but it skews things more to size. Proximity to failure, same thing. A lot of top powerlifters never sniff failure, but I sniff it every set. I sniff it good. I think it's also useful to look at size as potential strength. So if you don't do a movement, yes, you might get weaker at it while actually building muscle, but your potential strength is still going up. For example, my deadlift 10 rep max is 4 plates, which I did almost 5 years ago. So November 2017 is when I deadlifted 4 plates for 10 reps. I am bigger now, but I am weaker. But my potential strength has undoubtedly gone up. Which brings me to a nice metaphor or analogy, one of those words that I should know as a writer, of a tree. So you have the trunk of the tree, which is your hypertrophy progression, and then you have all these branches and limbs that branch outward and upward. And you can make faster progress by climbing these limbs. But that kind of takes you away from your goal because the limb only goes high up. It doesn't actually go as high as the trunk, it just sort of goes elsewhere. And this is the idea of strength specialization. You can make faster progress on a lift, especially for 1 rep, by specializing at that lift. My best bench press that I've ever done is 250 pounds. 250 pounds. Now, I've done 2 plates for 9 reps, so I could obviously butcher that 1 rep max if I wanted to, but does specializing in a 1 rep max actually help my hypertrophy? Not really. And in fact, in a lot of ways, especially as you get stronger, it takes away from your hypertrophy. Now, if you're a strength aficionado as well as a hypertrophy enthusiast, that might be worth it, because that might motivate you, that might satiate you, that might keep you going and keep the process processing, right? Like if you hit a 1 rep max weighted pull-up or bench press or deadlift or something like that, it might be worth it to you. And if that keeps you going, then it might actually be optimal. Now, Alex also made the argument that most lifters are weak. Okay, he might have said like novices, but, potato.
Potatoes.
And he's right. If you are not at certain numbers, focusing on getting those numbers up is the way to go. If you can only bench press 1 plate per side and you want a bigger chest, getting a bigger bench press should be your top priority, in my opinion. Are there other exercises that you can do and probably should do? Yeah, absolutely. You want some variety and variation in your training. You shouldn't just be doing squat, bench, deadlift if you're interested in hypertrophy. But they are still useful. I am purely focused on hypertrophy, but I still do squat, bench, deadlift variations. Now, basement bodybuilding also made the argument that you can be too focused on strength. And that point, you're hyper optimizing your technique or you're cutting your volume down because you have to manage your fatigue better.
Peaked?
And I would actually agree, and I think this is the trap that he said he has fallen into, and I do see it occasionally. But I would say more often I just see people who are not strong. They're just not anywhere near the numbers that they should be. So if you find yourself falling into that trap where you're hyper optimizing your technique, you're pulling with super wide sumo thinking you're going to get jacked that way, or you're using a massive bench press arch or something like that, in that case, you are following something that is not actually leading to your goals, and you would be better off reassessing and using a more moderate style of training, maybe a little bit more volume, maybe more exercise selection, more variety, etc. Now, Alex also mentioned that you have to find your own ratios, and I think this is what a lot of people miss. They want just this concrete number, 3-plate bench, 4-plate squat, 5-plate deadlift, right? Like, it's nice, but hitting those numbers doesn't actually do anything, okay? It's not like I'm saving up my bench press max, and then when I hit 315, my chest is like, all right, boys, it's time to grow. No, it's not what actually happens, okay? The process of getting there might be helpful, or the process of getting there might actually be suboptimal, okay? So I look at it as like building this base, and then you can draw from this base in order to get to a peak strength phase. Alexander Bromley has a great series of books on this, and then so you can take from that pool of reserves to test your max or to build to your max, right? So I've basically been in an 8-year base phase, right? So if I wanted to hit those bigger numbers, if I wanted to run a specialization phase, I could, right? Like, I'm not saying I couldn't bench more than 250 pounds. That's just what I've done so far. It's also worth noting that strength and size are both specific adaptations, okay? So if you're only doing squat, bench, deadlift, you're going to be missing a lot of the body. It's a pretty good start, right? Like, you're working your chest, your back, your hamstring, your quads, your glutes. You're working a hell of a lot of muscle, and minimalism can get you fairly far, but it's not going to get you all the way. In my latest book, I have a whole section on muscles that powerlifting doesn't really target, and if you want to do a power building style of program, you have to fill in those gaps to work on those weak points. Extreme example, if I want to build a bigger bicep, do I squat, bench, and deadlift? No, those don't really work the biceps. I mean, the deadlift a little bit, but So for example, I have pretty big arms, but I also have pretty strong arms. There's definitely a correlation there. I incline dumbbell curl 20 kilos, so 44 pounds, for 11 reps. And it makes sense, right? Like, I can't envision a future where I can do that for 24 kilos for 11 reps, and yet my biceps are not any bigger. Like, they would have to be bigger. It's an isolation movement. It's not very technical. There's just no way that I could get to those numbers without also growing. Or, another way to look at it, if I grew, I would be able to hit those numbers. And a lot of the muscles that make you look jacked aren't really targeted by powerlifting specifically. So, shoulders. Are the shoulders really going to be maximally developed just from squat, bench, deadlift, or even variations of them? Not really. Same thing with the arms. The biceps, the long head of the triceps. Not really a good way to go about it. For example, I have a recent client who has deadlifted 585 pounds in the past. He wants a bigger back. Are we going to be focused on driving up his 1 rep max hyper-optimized deadlift setup? Not really, because his goal now is hypertrophy. His deadlift might go up, especially for reps, but it's not going to be a major focus. As you get stronger, the cost of getting even stronger goes up. And I don't think it's linear. I would say it is more exponential, and the more resources that you sink into that pursuit, the more it takes away from other things that you could be doing that might be more efficient. Could be risk to reward, it could be stimulus to fatigue ratio, however you want to view it. But at a certain point, getting stronger does have a significant cost. For example, you take someone like Thor or Eddie Hall and they're deadlifting 500 kilos and they want a more developed back. Are you like 550, let's fucking go? No, okay, you would do other stuff, maybe more isolation, maybe more volume, squeeze, contraction, probably more drugs as well in that case. So my advice to you, and I have a whole section on this in my book, is find your strength standards on your lifts that you know from your experience correlate well with hypertrophy. Okay, so for chest, for back, for legs, for quad, like everything, every muscle group, have 2, 3, 4 lifts that you know are money and you can track them and progress over time. You still have to get stronger. It just might be a little bit different from a hyper optimized 1 rep max on squat, bench, deadlift. And you can probably use these to leverage a good powerlifting total if you really wanted to, right? Like if you get very, very strong on stiff-legged deadlifts, on dips, on close grip bench press, on overhead press, on front squats, on high bar squats, safety bar squats, if you're getting really, really strong at these, you might not immediately have your 1 rep max on your competition lifts go up, but your potential will. And if you're not getting stronger on these lifts that you've chosen and you know work well for you and you can progress on, if you're not progressing, something's wrong. Something is very, very wrong. It could be your diet, sleep, nutrition, stress. Again, the book goes into all this stuff, wherever I decide to put it. But that is a sign that something is very, very wrong. And this is where strength standards are useful. And the idea of getting stronger is useful. And often when someone is stronger than me at a 1 rep max, I send them my workout, the sets, the reps, the weights, the everything. And I'm like, could you do this? And they're like, oh no, that's a lot of volume. I haven't done, this disadvantaged lift. I haven't done that. Like, I couldn't keep up with that. And so I can't do what they did because I haven't specialized in that. But they couldn't do what I did because they haven't specialized in that. And so what do you want? Ask yourself, what do you want? What do you actually want? Not what someone else is putting in your mind, not some other content that you've consumed. What do you want? Do you want a mix of strength and size? Do you want pure size? Do you want pure strength? What do you want?
Not gonna be easy. It's gonna be really hard. And we're gonna have to work at this every day, but I wanna do that because I want you. I want all of you, forever, you and me, every day.
I have purposefully skewed my ratio of strength to size toward size through higher volume, through a certain technique, through a close proximity to failure, all those things which don't really lend themselves to strength but are very, very good for size. Lying there in my bed, I'm dying, I'm 90 whatever years old, and someone's like, do you wish you maxed out more and you hit a 275 pound bench? I'd be like, eh. So focus on you, focus on your goals, develop your own strength standards. That is the best way to go about things. For more information, definitely check out my book. It has a full audiobook, which took forever to record. It has, it's 160 pages. It is a full-on book, and everyone says I should charge more for it, but I think $20 is a pretty reasonable price. So definitely consider checking that out if you are interested in that kind of stuff. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.